Sonic X Episode 6. You know, it always seems like Sonic is just doing stuff for no reason when he's alone in the show, because he doesn't explain anything to us. What was the point of him running around outside? And yet Amy's infatuated with him because of that. Being mysterious is not a good thing. It means the writer was too lazy to think of a character's motivations and personality properly and explain it, or do it fast enough. Lack of something is not something. It's frustrating to not know something that should have easily been explained. Sonic could have just told us, I'm looking for the Chaos Emeralds. But even then, I refuse to believe he hasn't found them all already. Anyways, Chris tells Sonic and friends to at least try to stay out of sight while his parents are home. And then he ends up falling down the stairs. That broke all of his limbs. No, of course it didn't. Somehow he's not injured at all, right? There sure is a lot of wasted space in this episode that's not worth talking about. Basically, Chuck tells us about how Chris's parents are rich, busy people to be more interesting. And Tails feels bad for Chris because his parents aren't around. Then we see Eggman, so the plot is finally going to actually go somewhere. He wonders if one of his robots could brainwash the school children to look up to him as a hero and convince their parents to accept him as their ruler. Without brainwashing tools, he's really delusional to think that would actually work. But that was the whole joke. I mean, why would anyone actually accept and like a terrorist alien who wanted to blow up Station Square and build his own city on top of it? This plan has no chance of success. That's not tension. That's not suspense. And this is one of those times where it doesn't look logical that he's selecting his robot teacher at random. Logically, the slots would have selected a robot that isn't programmed to be a school teacher, that could replace Mr. Stewart and comically throw him out of the room. Stewart, who gets off the floor extremely quickly, naturally wants to give the principal a piece of his mind for replacing him. He's told that he never actually hired that robot, but the principal lets the robot do what he wants because he's making the kids easily learn math and enjoy themselves. So he just tells Stewart that he should study his technique and become a better teacher and walks away. It would have been less frustrating and unbelievable if the principal said, well, I don't have to pay him. Then Stewart decides to go check things out with the headquarters and calls homeroom with the code Red Priority Report. They don't want to send out the military, navy, and helicopters because a robot replaced him in his classroom, even though it's a robot. Why would they find it to be a huge cause for concern? Obviously, everyone should assume it's made by Eggman, and who would want to trust a robot like that to teach kids? It could be brainwashing them or have a bomb in them. Why are they not taking it seriously? Besides, they specifically hired him to spy on Chris, and he's not able to do that anymore. You'd think they would care about that. That's not funny. Stewart then gets help from a cop and learns that the kids aren't in the classroom because they're going to be taught baseball. Stewart's part of the plot is just a waste of time because it's obvious that he won't be allowed to accomplish his goal because then the plot would end too easily. The cop says that the kids are having a great time already and he wishes he was one of them. But when Stewart tells him to stop eating and arrest the robot already, the cop furiously runs after him, instead of doing his job. I'm torn on whether this is realistic behavior for all these people. The robot is being nice and a good teacher, but it's a robot! The only robots of that kind of intelligence in this world would be made by Eggman. That would cause a panic! People are not nice and accepting enough to just like that robot just because of that, instead of hating and judging him for a surface appearance. That's just not realistic. All of these kids would be terrified of him, immediately. Eggman then gets mad when he sees camera footage of how the robot's doing and says that he's supposed to make the kids love him, not himself. So wouldn't the robot be programmed to do that instead of doing what he's not supposed to? By the way, Eggman just thought of the idea of a robot teacher brainwashing the kids at the start of the episode.
Way to conquer this planet! Perhaps the children, maybe one of my robots.
So how did he already have a robot teacher made that he could employ right away? He was talking as if it was a brand new idea, wasn't he? And then he selected it from a slot machine. After the oddly sympathetic and likable robot catches the baseball, Bo-kun says Eggman has a message for him that's threatening. Bo-kun's pronounced Bo-kun? My whole life I thought it was pronounced Bokon. Though the U in it, I guess I should have pronounced it Bokun, but... Anyways, the robot teacher talks to Bo-kun about how he's found it far more rewarding to be admired himself. And Bokoon tells him that Eggman would turn him into scrap metal. The kids then admire him because he's refusing to abandon the students, even though he's being threatened for it. Bokoon outright tells the robot to make the kids admire Eggman. So obviously the kids had to know what was meant to be going on. They know the full truth by now, so it makes sense. I definitely like this better than in Sonic F for once, because there, the robot had a split personality where it constantly acted menacing and had its eyes turn red, and it worshipped Eggman with a scary tone, even telling the kids in the baseball field to pretend that baseball was the skull of someone who would oppose Eggman. And while it was amusing, logically the kids would all just be terrified of him, so the plot wouldn't work. They would all just run away. Eggman shows up, and the kids all get annoyed with the robot teacher for naturally being scared and pleading with them for help, when, come on, who can blame him? And the robot gets reprogrammed to let Eggman take over and put the kids in detention, and it keeps Chris from going home as a result. Well, at least it was amusing that Chris's father shouts that they have to stay calm. I was impressed that he was actually worrying about Chris not being home. But it was funny in Sonic F when he just said, "Rich people are talking," and said that he didn't want to hear about Chuck's engineering. He was a lot more funny in that show, being like surprisingly honest and rude. Then Eggman tells the kids to draw him, and Sonic runs over to the baseball yard, naturally since Chris hadn't gone home yet, so he would have gotten curious. I mean, even if he had just gotten detention, he still would have gone there just in case. Then the robot teacher tells Eggman that he's a chump because he was so busy showing off that he hadn't noticed they were under attack. I was surprised he was still able to be sassy to him when he was reprogrammed to do whatever he said. He sends missiles out of his head after Sonic somehow ran to the top of a vertical pole, and Sonic effortlessly dodges all of the missiles and runs into the robot to make it explode in one hit. I expected a lot longer of a fight than that. Is every episode gonna be like this? The comic is so much better at fight scenes than this. It actually had every action scene take a significant amount of time because the robot would get a bunch of hits in, and there was genuine tension. There was focus on characters other than Sonic fighting, which added to the tension. It might have handled the action scenes better than any other continuity did because of that, even if it was predictable because it was always the same formula where the hero struggled and then won at the end. Like in Danny Phantom. Here, the hero just makes them all explode in one hit. That's pathetic. Sure, it makes sense that someone who can move at the speed of sound would be able to do that, but that's not good action scene writing. Maybe if so much of the episode wasn't wasted on worthless padding, we could have had his time spent on what it should be spent on for an action series. You know, like actual fighting, not Chris being with a robot teacher, having the whole plot of basically Chris filler. It's only interesting because a robot is there. At least it's not as bad as in AOSCH where Sonic wins by getting stuff out of nowhere. But that would have been more interesting to watch than this. Anyways, Eggman offers to give Sonic a bumper sticker of himself. I liked in Sonic F where Eggman told Sonic that even though Sonic doesn't have a car, he could always put the bumper sticker on his butt. And Sonic said no. And everything works out alright. Except for Mr. Stewart, because after he says there might be more to being a teacher than passing out homework and amusingly napping in class, he gets chased by a cop, which struck me as unnecessarily mean-spirited of the writer. Seriously, what did the writer have against this character to put him through all of this? He must have had pretty terrible teachers as a kid. Well, at least it was interesting that Chris's father says he was kept after school a couple times as a kid, and Chris's mother says he wasn't well behaved. This was an episode where Eggman tried to use a robot teacher to teach kids to obey and admire someone who tried to destroy Station Square and build a city out of its ruins. Yeah, somehow I don't see that plan as very likely to succeed. But somehow, the reason it fails isn't just that. You know, AOSCH Robotnik was much more threatening because he actually brainwashed people successfully, more than once. Somehow, the robot specifically programmed for the one task of teaching kids to admire Eggman has the free will to defy that programming entirely and be a good teacher who likes being admired himself. Huh? Also, Eggman says he's got to think of a way to conquer this planet. And then says perhaps the children, and maybe one of my robots could brainwash. So obviously the dialogue's implying that he just thought up this robot teacher idea now. And yet he selects a robot teacher that was already made from a random slot machine. That was bad translation. I figured this plot machine would cause problems with the logic. But who knows, maybe he didn't have that exact dialogue in Japanese. The robot teacher was a pretty likable character, so it's a shame it got reprogrammed to be evil and destroyed in one hit. But there was no escaping that kind of thing happening to him. Eggman knew where he was and what he was doing through his camera eyes, and everyone would know where the robot teacher was teaching. There was a lot of wasted space in this episode. Stewart's entire subplot was just doomed from the start to be pointless, or the episode would end too quickly. Eggman's plan was entertaining, but the idea wasn't even remotely fleshed out properly because all he got the kids to do was try to draw him. It's not like he got them to build a statue of him or a weapon. This kind of thing should have been most of the episode. But instead we just have the unfunny gags where the robot teacher is a generic nice teacher and makes Stewart look bad when he tries to get rid of him. But at least it makes actual sense that the kids would like and admire him because he's always nice. Even if it would still not make sense because he's still a robot. But at least he's still being nice. Unlike in Sonic F, where he constantly mood swings to being an evil robot saying they should crush Eggman's enemies, and yet the kids still admire him. Even though it does make a lot more sense in Sonic F in the sense that the robots always had the evil Eggman glorifying in him, and just didn't do a self-diagnostic that day to keep his programming from glitching out. While in Sonic X, there was never any hint of an Eggman glorifier in him, and it makes no sense. There was no attempt at an explanation for why the robot is even able to disobey Eggman's orders, and never glorified him once. And seriously, the kids would just be terrified of this robot. They wouldn't like him. I can handle plots that are ultimately pointless and accomplish nothing in TV shows if the plot is good enough. For all of the previous Sonic shows, that's like every episode. But this was just an idiot plot where Eggman only tried the doomed to fail plan because he was a completely delusional parody of himself. He should have known it wouldn't work. He wasn't talking about literally brainwashing kids to admire him, so it was just padding really. It was entertaining enough, but it was frustrating seeing Stewart get mistreated the whole episode. It just felt mean-spirited. It's not like he was portrayed as a bad teacher like I was expecting. Sonic F had this mistreatment of him make more sense because it was karma. He used Chris as an example in his math problems. He called him Visual Aid and Red-Shirted Boy, and had a creepy theme song where it all went black and white where he said an evil catchphrase. Here, he's just a normal teacher.